So we're going to be watching this video by William Plays, which is comparing Final Fantasy XIV and World of Warcraft rating progression. I like the fact that he uses the same separator that I use in the titles. I'm not saying I invented that or anything. I probably didn't, but I don't see it as often as I would expect using this symbol as a separator. So it's a good indicator. I think this is going to be a good video based on that alone. Let me see. The volume should be good.
Okay, so let me start off by saying I raid progressed in World of Warcraft on the hardest difficulty for years, and it was something that I loved. Seeing new raid encounters, learning new mechanics, seeing the team come together after so much trial and error, and seeing the boss's HP slowly whittling down to 0%. The elation when the boss finally dies. That is such a great feeling. Now, when it comes to Final Fantasy XIV, I had some experience playing it back when A Realm Reborn and Heavensward first came out, but I didn't really commit to the game until Shadowbringers. You know, after Shadowlands had completely demotivated me from playing World of Warcraft anymore. Unfortunately, when I got into Final Fantasy XIV, Shadowbringers had already been out, so I didn't get to experience the expansion fresh, or how raid progression felt.
This was the same case for me, pretty much. Although I didn't even start after the Shadowlands disappointed us. I started it after BFA was a complete piece of dog shit, which it was. But yeah, a little bit of a different experience, but still, we both kind of got it. I guess we both kind of got into the game at the same time, which is one of the things about like the whole Savage thing. You usually don't want to... You don't want to like hold people back that already know the strategies and they're doing Party Finder and it's like, oh, you watch video X. It's not nearly as fun to do a raid after a raid has been figured out, which is why I've been having a blast with, progging through P1S. I mean, we're going very, very slow, but it's whatever. It's way more satisfying than like watching a video. Okay, here's how you do it. It's almost like here's the recipe for success, and here you go, and here's how you do it, and boom, it's done. It's like, if you like doing it like that, it's whatever, but I find it much more engaging to blind prog.
Groups I did get into, for the extremes and savages, they were groups that already knew the encounters. As I'm sure you are aware, going through an encounter with a group that already knows what to do is a very different experience than going into an encounter that has yet to be learned. With Endwalker out, I finally got the chance to see what progression is like when all the content is fresh, when everyone is blind and has to learn the fights, what it's like to get the required gear to even get into the harder content. With that, let's compare how Final Fantasy XIV and World of Warcraft do raid progression.
Getting minimum item level.
The first thing you have to do at the start of an expansion in both games is get to the minimum item level to do, well, the harder content. In World of Warcraft's case, it's to queue up for heroics, to get the gear to queue up for looking for raid. And you also will need gear for anyone to consider inviting you to a party for raiding and mythic pluses.
You go from heroics to looking for raid? I didn't know people actually did that. I figured you'd go from heroics to mythics. And even I personally, I would 1000% just straight up skip looking for raid if I'm able to, because looking for raid is it is the worst raid experience that you will ever have. It is terrible, and it's not even worth the loot that you get at the end of it. That's how bad it is, as far as I'm concerned. Looking for raid is atrocious. And I would rather looking for raid didn't even exist. I know that some people swear by looking for raid. Like, I'm sorry. I think looking for raid is so bad, I'd rather it not even fucking be there. This is terrible.
And in Final Fantasy XIV's case, it's the minimum item level to queue up for the extreme trials, the raids, and also some endgame dungeons. I just wanted to start off by saying this is in relation to the start of an expansion. Things will change as the expansion goes on. In World of Warcraft, it can take a very long time to get the gear you need to run the content you want. As an example, to queue up for the heroic dungeons, I remembered running a friend through the normal dungeons for hours to get his item level high enough for the heroics. When the expansion first came out, there was no currency you got that you could exchange for gear.
You guys remember when Soul Breezy said, "Oh my god, gearing in 14 is boring." See, in World of Warcraft, it's not boring. It's got all the excitement of a slot machine, you know? That's why he had to run his friend through like multiple normal dungeons until eventually the loot dropped that allowed his friend to go do heroics, and then they both went to go do heroics together until eventually they got enough loot drops that would allow them to go to LFR. Personally, I'd push heroics until I'd get enough loot drops to get into mythics, and then I would go into mythic dungeons and push to get enough loot to get into raids. That's what I would do. But, you know, yeah, see? In World of Warcraft, it's surprise mechanics. That's what they call it, right? Surprise mechanics. You never know what you're going to get. It's a surprise. Whereas in 14, it's like, no, I'll just go get like my chest piece and all that. Of course, it's different when you hit Savage. But, you know, in getting prepared for Savage, acquiring the gear that you need is actually fairly easy. I mean, fairly easy, fairly... I mean, it is, I think it is actually easy. It's easy, and you can plan around it because it's not random.
So it was really up to the RNG gods for getting your item level up. In Final Fantasy XIV, by the time I hit level cap, I was already within 5 item levels to being able to queue up for the extreme trials. The game flat out gives you 5 pieces of high item level gear from just doing the MSQ, filling out your left side of the equipment screen. And then it's just a matter of getting some gear for the right side. You know, your rings and necklaces and stuff of that nature. It's pretty quick to run a few dungeons to fill those out. And if you are supremely unlucky with the RNG, you always get the tomestones that you can then exchange to fill in that gear. I've now leveled up 3 jobs to level cap in Final Fantasy XIV, all of which require different gear sets, and they are all at the minimum item level to get into the extremes and normal mode raids. And it really didn't take all that long to get to that item level. Now, obviously RNG can sometimes be fickle, but I feel like in Final Fantasy XIV, they design their systems in such a way that RNG doesn't get too annoying. Now, I mentioned this before, but learning fights in MMORPGs, at least for me, is one of the most enjoyable aspects of the games. I love progressing in mythic raid encounters for World of Warcraft, seeing the boss's HP slowly decreasing each pull, watching as the raid team got better and better at the mechanics, everyone moving in perfect harmony until it all comes together in that final blaze of glory and the boss goes down. It is a great experience. It's fun. It releases that dopamine and I wind up smiling from ear to ear. I think Final Fantasy XIV does this even better than World of Warcraft. We were doing the second extreme trial for Endwalker, so anyone who's done that knows exactly what I am talking about here. And the first phase was one of the best learning experiences I've ever had in raiding. It blew me away with just how much fun it is learning all those mechanics. And I mean that, all those mechanics.
It's like the thing about extremes and raids in 14 versus in World of Warcraft is that you don't actually get punished for failing. And it's like, some people might consider that it's like, well, there should be a punishment for failure. And it's like, when you're raiding, I'm not sure that I agree with that, because, I mean, the punishment is usually just taking time away. In World of Warcraft, we're like, okay, now you have to run all the way back to the boss. And if you take long enough, it's like the trash is going to respawn. You're going to have to re-clear the trash. And it's like, those aren't really actual barriers or anything that's going to stop us from actually doing the content. It's just something that we have to do. It's just something that, it's busy work. Whereas in 14, they're like, nope, reset, go again. Reset, go again. Reset, go again. Until you get tired. It's like, listen, you can attempt this boss until your eyes are bleeding. Which is cool, because it lets you just focus on the actual boss fight itself.
Mechanics. The first phase of this trial has about 10 mechanics you really have to get comfortable with in order to clear that phase. You will die a lot while trying to figure out what to do.
That's the
Then
beauty
you
of
get
it.
into phase 2, where the fight is almost completely unrecognizable from the normal mode, with many new mechanics added. And you also have to contend with every mechanic you were doing in phase 1, so it becomes this insanely hectic phase. But at the same time, as you learn it and become more acquainted with what's going on, the chaos of it starts to make sense, and it feels really good when it all comes together. So, there are 3 reasons I feel that progressing in Final Fantasy XIV feels so good. Number 1, food lasts through death, so you don't feel like you are wasting a bunch of resources trying to beat these fights.
Yeah, the thing is, food in 14 is like flasks. The difference is that World of Warcraft has the additional thing that you got to do, which in WoW is food. But, you know, in here it's just like food is your flask, pretty much.
Dying isn't nearly as much of a punishment. In World of Warcraft, when you die, your food effect goes with you, and it can become very annoying when you die a lot and have to keep eating that very expensive food. Number 2, infinite battle reses. You know, when I first heard of this, coming from World of Warcraft, I laughed at it. I thought that would make it way too easy. But here's the thing, I was an idiot. This makes progressing the fights so much less taxing and annoying. The first time we got to Enrage in the Extreme Trial 2, the boss was at like 35% HP. Just think about that.
That's
We
even
weren't
worse than us.
Close to beating it. The infinite battle reses really help with making progression less annoying and more fun. You get to keep seeing more of the fight and its mechanics. If your group is dying all the time, you will not beat the Enrage. It's as simple as that. Battle resing gives you a minute of 25% less of your main stats, so your DPS is going to be severely dampened. So at the end of the day, your group still needs a solid performance to get the clear. Number 3, when you do wipe, you start right back.
Because, like, a lot of people might think, well, if you can resurrect forever, then it's easy. No, it's not, because every time that somebody dies, they get a penalty, and that penalty consistently increases. It's not a permanent penalty, it's a penalty for the duration of the fight. So whenever the fight resets, penalty goes away. So it's not like something, oh, this is going to be a problem because you died, and now you're going to have this debuff for God knows how long. It's like, it's for that pull. So every mistake that you make only counts for that particular pull. I mean, obviously, damage to your armor is going to last forever, but you guys get the idea. Damage to your armor is going to be permanent, but the actual penalty is going to be for that pull, and it stacks. So it's like if somebody keeps making mistakes, they basically become useless towards the group. So like you die once, then somebody reses you, die again. It's like your stats are at 50%. Then if you die again, your stats are at 25%, at which point you're absolutely worthless and you're just going to keep dying because there's nothing you can do, particularly in a savage fight. Like if you die 3 times in a row in a savage fight. I mean, hell, you die twice in a row in a savage fight, you're going to be pretty much worthless to the group. That's just the way that it goes. Like, I'm sorry, but it is what it is.
At the boss and can jump right back in. This helps so much. You don't have to run back. You don't have that downtime. You can just try again. You know, this is one of the reasons Super Meat Boy was such a fun platformer. Despite being brutally hard and unforgiving, when you died, you just spawned right away and could try again. So, I am not going to lie. I had trepidation about using the Party Finder in Final Fantasy XIV. The Party Finder in World of Warcraft, well, it left me dead inside, and I was scared to even give it a shot in Final Fantasy XIV.
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
Here's the thing. In World of Warcraft, my experience with the Party Finder was you would spend hours trying to get into a group for the content you wanted to do. A single wipe later, the group would fall apart, and you'd felt like you completely wasted your time and energy.
In Final Fantasy XIV, it takes like 5 or 6 wipes. I mean, I don't know. It depends, right? It depends. It's your mileage is definitely going to vary on that one, but yeah, Party Finder, I don't think is the ideal way of experiencing new content, which is why personally I prefer to go with a set group of people and have everybody on Discord. because like the whole thing about, oh yeah, everybody watch this video and then we're going to do this tactic. And there's the whole thing about the macros where people, they just do like one macro that tells you, okay, tank does this, off tank does this, blah blah blah. And I was like, maybe I'm too old, and that just does not work for me. I'd rather be on Discord and have like call outs and stuff. I want to be able to tell somebody, hey, try this instead, maybe I'll try this instead, maybe you try that. That to me is the rating experience. The whole, somebody puts a macro in chat that has a solution to the problem and just expects everybody to do the thing. I don't like that. I don't think that's fun, but that's my personal opinion, which is why I try to play with, with people from my community and stuff. It's way better.
The thing with World of Warcraft is, people tend to leave after a wipe or two. Many groups have the structural integrity of a house of cards. It doesn't take much to bring
Less
it
than a
down.
house of cards.
I've seen so many groups fall apart, and it doesn't take much. And in my own experiences, I've seen plenty of negative and downright mean comments when players messed up. So, in Final Fantasy XIV, I had this idea that you shouldn't be going into Party Finder unless you know the fights very well.
No,
I
there's
should have known the
practice
games
groups.
would be different here. I mean, they are in so many other regards. But that lingering thought was still deeply embedded. So, I used Duty Finder to try to learn the fights to be ready for Party Finder. And when I told my friend I was doing that, well, he laughed at me and told me to just use Party Finder. And thank God for that. So, I found a party
Dude's
in there
been progging
relatively
through Party
quickly
Finder.
for the extreme trial I wanted to do. It was advertised as practice, and we wiped for about an hour straight on the first phase, and everyone was remaining positive the entire time. No one left group. I was in shock. And in all the groups I had joined, until I got my first kill, I had not once seen negativity or people losing their tempers. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm
It
sure
happens.
players get agitated
Oh,
and
yeah.
lose their cool. And I'm sure if you tried to join a group that was farming an extreme trial with zero experience, they wouldn't be too pleased with you when you died over and over again. But from my first impressions using Party Finder, well, it was a very pleasant experience.
I think that it's like Party Finder. It's going to be one of those things that if you do it while the content is relatively recent, it'll work because there's no other way of doing things. So people are kind of like forced to learn. But I think that if you go in with like week 2, week 3, I think you're going to have a very different experience. That's what I'm thinking. But like I said, I personally avoid Party Finder. The few times that I played in Party Finder, I wasn't even the one doing the groups. It was hollowed in chat here. So yeah, that's the way that I think about that. I could be wrong. I could be right. But yeah, that's the way that I look at those things. Know what you're doing is something that you see very often. Bring brain. That used to be the WoW one. The WoW one was like, bring your brain. That's what people would usually announce in in the Party Finder. Getting raid gear
in World of Warcraft is, well, it's like
garbage.
pulling teeth. It's
No,
uncomfortable,
it's hot
painful,
garbage.
and
Okay,
you
no,
feel
listen,
like you are being jerked
I'm
around.
sorry that I'm being a pause Andy here, but it's like, no. Let's make it perfectly clear. Getting raid gear in World of Warcraft is hot garbage. And Blizzard is so fucking garbage at managing that they actively prevent people from optimizing the system. Because, like, let me tell you something. The best way to gear up in a guild is loot council. And I know there's going to be people who are going to be like, what? Loot council? Oh, no. And it's like, no. Listen, you have to find a good guild. If you don't have a good guild, then yeah, you have to use DKP and all these other bullshit systems, which is it's hot garbage. Let's just be completely real here. DKP system is hot garbage. So the best way to gear up in a guild in World of Warcraft, as far as I'm concerned, is Loot Council. Why is it good? Loot Council is good because basically you get to choose who gets the loot and you put it to the person that needs it the most, which is the best way to do it. Now, the problem is obviously there's people that take advantage of that and all of that, but at the end of the day, Blizzard literally removed the functionality to master loot because for those of you who don't play WoW, you might not be aware of this, but you legit cannot have master loot in World of Warcraft because Blizzard believes that their people are getting scammed. It's like, I should preface that. I don't think Blizzard actually believes that. I think that Blizzard knows that by not allowing people to do master loot, it's going to take people longer to gear up, which means that people have to play for longer, which brings them engagement, which is all they really want. Let's be completely just honest and real here. That's the real reason why they're doing it. But they say, no, we're doing it because little Timmy got scammed. Little Timmy got scammed. They told him they were going to give him loot, and they master looted all away. They ninja looted little Timmy. And it's like, listen, dude, fuck little Timmy, okay? If little Timmy got scammed, that's little Timmy's fucking problem, okay? Life is fucking tough. Little Timmy got scammed, lost his little purple item. That's too fucking bad, okay? Next time he's going to know better than that. Little Timmy needs to learn how things work in the real world. Little Timmy needs to get scammed once or twice. I probably got scammed in video games multiple times even, I'd imagine. I used to play fucking Diablo 2. I would be surprised. I can't really remember that happening, but I'd be surprised if I didn't get scammed at least like 10 fucking times. Guess what? You learn. You learn that people can be scumbags. This is actually a valuable learning experience. So Blizzard can tell me whatever the fuck they want about why they don't implement master loot, but I know it's a bunch of fucking bullshit. Because they're not removing master loot because little Timmy got scammed, okay? They just want to make sure that when little Timmy gets scammed, they're getting their cut. That's what they fucking want. If they could get their cut in money for little Timmy getting scammed, they'd be scamming all the fucking little Timmys, all right? But, yeah, it's like Blizzard removed master loot, and that makes it really hard for people to plan how to assign gear in a raid. People have to try and plan around it by having artificially higher level gear in their bags and doing all this fucking nonsense only because Blizzard can't be asked to. And let me tell you, the amount of times, and this is like, I didn't even raid that much in Shadowlands, and the amount of times that I got items that I wasn't going to use and that I couldn't give to somebody else because the item happened to be of higher item level than the items I was using, it happened a fuck ton, all right? It must have been at least over like fucking 15, 16 times that I got like a piece of loot that I could have given to somebody else. And you guys can ask Q about it because Q was there. He was like, fuck, why don't you have better item level? And I'm like, yeah, I know. Now I have this fucking useless item in my bags that's not even good for me. So yeah, gearing up in raids in World of Warcraft is a fucking shit show. And they're fucking stupid ass. I'm not going to get into tirade of the fucking vault because you guys know me. If you get me started on the fucking vault, I'm going to just pop off and like going to stretch this video all the way up into fucking 3 hours talking about the goddamn vault. But it's like the weekly vault thing, the fucking free-to-play mechanic can kiss my sweet ass. So yeah, the raid vault and the raid loot, it's complete and absolute fucking garbage. Don't even fucking, but the one in Final Fantasy 14 is boring. I'll take boring and predictable over a fucking slot machine any day of the week, baby. Literally any day of the week. But it's predictable. Yeah, it is. And guess what? It's way better than fucking raiding for 2 months and not getting jack shit or getting garbage loot that you didn't want it to get to begin with because you got it previously in a different way. In 14, at least you can fucking plan around it. At least we can plan around the loot that we're going to get.
That's by design. They want to keep you raiding and playing, and a way that they do that is by making gear take a while.
Yeah,
this
exactly.
has not been the case in Final Fantasy XIV. I am specifically talking about Extreme Trials right now, but I'll talk a bit about the Pandemonium raids at the end.
Mm-hmm.
So, there are two extremes at the moment. Extreme 1 drops the right side gear, also known as rings, necklaces, etc. The fight drops 4 items, and you will also get a totem that you can exchange for gear if your RNG is really bad. Extreme 2 drops your weapons, and it drops 1 role-specific weapon and 1 weapon coffer, which has a weapon for whatever role opens it. You also get a totem as well. If you are in a static, it will take at most 8 runs to get your weapon. If you are using the party finder and are really unlucky, it will take at most 10 runs, because that's how many totems it takes to trade for the weapon. Extreme Trials can also be run as much as you want, so you can farm them until your heart's content.
Yep.
Now, the way raiding works, such as Pandemonium, is that all the raid encounters drop what the game calls relics, which have no role restriction on them, and you have to collect a specific amount of these relics in order to trade for the piece of gear that you want. The great thing about Final Fantasy XIV raids is that you only get locked out of loot from an encounter after you have already won a piece of loot, so you can keep killing the boss over and over again until you get your desired.
Again, we talked about this as well. So in Savage, like I said, Savage is different, which I should have talked about that in my other video because nobody's called me out on it, but I don't know if people don't know or if people, are aware of the fact that in Savage is different. In Savage is like traditional lockouts. So like you run Savage once, you clear the boss, there's loot drops, and there's a lockout, just like in most other MMOs that I'm aware of. But in normal, that's a really cool thing about it. In normal, basically you can actually plan, like I've been telling you guys, I was like, I want to get the chest piece. And you guys saw it. I was streaming when we were doing it. I was like, I'm going to get the chest piece. And I got the chest piece, And for the second week, I was like, oh, I want to get the gloves and boots. And I got the gloves and boots. You just keep raiding until you get the loot that you want. So normal raiding gearing is really, really good.
Relic. Then, you go to the Relic Exchange NPC, trade in the required amount of relics, and get your piece of gear. It can take a while, obviously, to fill out all of your gear, but you have complete control over what you get and when you get it, which is really nice. I dig player agency. That is so different from World of Warcraft, where after you kill a boss, the gear is locked out, regardless of if you got something, which increases the amount of time it takes to get gear, and also leads to frustration when something you want doesn't drop, after weeks of trying. Final Fantasy XIV gives you more agency.
Imagine this scenario. You're playing with a team of people, which in World of Warcraft, let's say for like a flex raid, let's say you got, I don't know, we were usually running close to like 20, I think. So sometimes it'd be 18, sometimes it'd be like 15 or something like that, I think, if I remember correctly. So say you got a team like that, right? And you're all running the raid. And you run the raid and you get nothing. And then in the vault, you get like a pair of bracers or something, whatever, worthless, right? Then you run the raid the other week, and you get nothing. I mean, you might get an item piece or something that might not be useful for you. And in the meantime, you're seeing other people getting gear. That's like a clear path towards drama. Because it fucking sucks when you go through a raid and you put in the effort and you get literally nothing out of it. And it happens way too often in World of Warcraft. What's WoW's equivalent to the 550 a week tombstone gear? When I was playing Battle for Azeroth and Shadowlands, it didn't have it. It used to have it back in Wrath of the Lich King. I mean, I think they've added it at some point during one of the other expansions that I didn't play too much of. But in Wrath of the Lich King, you would have Valor tomes that you could farm by grinding heroics, and then you could get some gear out of it. Cataclysm had it as well. Okay, but in BFA, when I was playing it, there's nothing. There's no equivalent to tombstone gear. You would just like have to run mythics and hope that you'd get a good drop in your weekly chest. That's how it would go. And then in Shadowlands, they did the vault, which is also another piece of shit, where you'd run content and then you hope for the best when it comes to getting the loot. But yeah, it's... I think they might have added some kind of tombstone system now in Shadowlands. I'm not sure. But yeah, basically, it's just not there. So it's all about luck. If you're lucky, you get your gear. If you're not lucky, you're fucked.
And respects your time. You get to decide how you want to gear up your character, and that is something World of Warcraft has been lacking. Because of all of the RNG in World of Warcraft, it's hard to gear your character up the way that you want to. It feels really bad when the RNG weekly loot chest gives you stuff you don't need anymore.
There it is. There it is. There it is, dude. There it is. The fucking weekly vault. Now you tell me if this shit does not look like a fucking free-to-play system. Please. Please. Please tell me if this doesn't look like a goddamn free-to-play system. I'd love to hear all about it. Tell me. Nah, it doesn't look like free-to-play at all. What if I tell you that you get to choose between one of these items once a week after you've done, how many? 10 Mythic Keystone dungeons? Or after you've done 10 Castle Nathria bosses? And then, you know, because like you do 3 Castle Nathria bosses, you unlock this, and then you unlock this and this. And you don't even get all of them. You get to choose one of them. It's such a terrible fucking system, dude. It's such a terrible fucking system. I cannot believe that there are actually people out there that defend this piece of shit. Good God, dude. Imagine the levels of copium. The levels of absolute copium.
Because you got it in the raid this week. Or worse yet, nothing of value. That is really the worst. I just wanted to say something here in closing. I don't think gear taking a long time to obtain is inherently a bad thing. The problem I have with it in World of Warcraft, and most modern MMOs, to be fair, is that gear is so replaceable that spending a bunch of time to get it, well, it seems utterly pointless and a complete waste of your time. You know that gear is replaced frequently, so spending a bunch of time to get it just feels kind of hollow. I remembered when I played Final Fantasy XI, gear in that game took a very long time to obtain. Sometimes you could go over a year without the piece of gear you want dropping. The big difference was that Final Fantasy XI was far more horizontal with its gear progression, which basically meant that those pieces of gear were always relevant. You didn't feel like you wasted your time getting the gear because the game didn't replace it all the next raid. Anyways, that's how these two behemoth of games handle raid progression. I think it's pretty obvious which one I prefer, but what are your thoughts? If you haven't raided in Final Fantasy XIV yet, does hearing this make you want to do so? And
here's the thing. Raiding in 14 is much more friendly to even for people that don't have like a dedicated raid group. Because like, let's say, you know, in World of Warcraft, let's say that you're not a mythic raider, right? You're just someone that wants to do heroics, for instance. In 14, you'd be able to do, I think that normals are kind of like pretty close to heroics in WoW. Could be wrong. Don't know. That's the way that I feel, at least. But it's like, you can basically just queue for raids and experience the raids. And most players are going to be competent enough to finish the raid just fine. And, you know, if you want to get into Savage, then you're talking like Party Finder or whatnot. But if you don't have like a dedicated group of people to play with, I find 14 much more friendly than World of Warcraft. Savage is not heroic. Savage would be mythic. Heroic WoW is Savage Final Fantasy XIV. I disagree. I've done heroic bosses in World of Warcraft. I would say Savage is harder, personally. And you can just like, and here's the thing, you can just like, there's catch-up mechanics in here that let you just acquire gear at your own pace without having to stress out. Whereas in World of Warcraft, I always felt like I was stressed out if you miss like one of the many activities that you have to do. You always feel like, oh shit, I gotta catch up. I gotta go do more mythics. Gotta grind this thing. Gotta go grind that thing. And here it's like, nah, dude, just do a couple of experts a week and we'll get you the gear. It's about player skill versus actually just acquiring ridiculous amounts of gear. It's more dependent on player skill. Because like you can have, say like a 580 Paladin versus a 570 Paladin. And if the 570 Paladin is a much better player, then the 580 Paladin is going to suck ass.
that's all I have for today. I hope you all have a very happy holiday. Thank you so much for watching. Please consider liking, commenting, and subscribing. And until next time, well, take care.
That was a good video. One of the things that he did not mention, though, is deadly boss mods versus not needing an external add-on to actually raid, which a lot of you guys pointed out during the video, which I'll bring up here just real quick. It's like, for those of you that don't know, in order for you to properly raid in World of Warcraft, you're expected to use a mod called Deadly Boss Mods. If you do not use Deadly Boss Mods, then most people won't even take you seriously, because quite simply Blizzard plans the raids based on Deadly Boss Mods. And I know I'm going to get like 2 or 3 WoW and these coming in here. It's like, you don't need Deadly Boss Mods. Fucking bullshit. You're lying to your fucking self on your copium-addled haze, okay, buddy? It's like, if you want to raid, you're using Deadly Boss Mods or Big Wigs or whatever, because quite simply, and let's just be completely honest here, the default Blizzard UI is literally fucking unplayable if you want to raid. It's that simple, okay? And if you're gonna try to call me out on that, good fucking luck making that argument. But yeah, the default Blizzard UI is fucking unplayable when it comes to raiding. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Fucking 2004 UI with 0 improvements or customization unless you put a bunch of third-party add-ons in the fucking game.